Hello, good evening, and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. Well, we're talking about Jethro Tull, and we've made it to kind of an oddball album, but a very good one. We're talking about Living in the Past. It's not really that it's an oddball album. It's just odd in that it's a compilation album. This was released in 1972, or on the end of '72, and where the band themselves were at, they had just come off the heels of Thick as a Brick, which of course is the 40-minute conceptual masterpiece of satire and comedy that it is. And they were, at the time, probably starting to gather ideas for the follow-up to Thick as a Brick. This is not the follow-up to Thick as a Brick. Like I said, this was released as kind of a way to probably keep the momentum of the success of Thick as a Brick going, and also because it's just a collection of songs. I think it kind of protected Tull from getting too associated with the whole prog thing, which I guess that's a good thing. It features a lot of single tracks that weren't on any albums, although there are a few album tracks on here. And that's why I'm doing it, because there's a lot of really essential early Tull songs that were not released on Stand Up or Benefit or This Was even. And I think that's just the fact of the late 60s. You know, the late 60s were all about, it was still a singles market, right? It was just around that late 60s period that the album as an art form and a product was starting to take off. So, in a lot of cases, the non-album tracks of those early Tull songs would have been the best on the album, actually. But it spans all the incarnations of Tull, so we get a few songs from the Mick Abrahams lineup. We get most of the album is from the stand-up lineup, so we have Ian Anderson, Martin Barre, Clive Bunker, and Glenn Cornick. And then the fourth side, the final side, is the newest lineup. So for most of it's the newest lineup. So we get Barry Barlow on the drums and Jeffrey Hammond on the bass. Also worth noting, side 3 is the first case, the first little bit of live Tull that we get to hear, which is quite fantastic. So yeah, it's a double album, so there's a lot of tracks on it. So I'll get to talking about it. The original album cover came in a beautiful package, and this is a reissue, so it's not quite as nice. But anyway, I digress. Side 1 opens with Song for Jeffrey. We already talked about it on This Was. It kind of closed This Was. It works as a good closer, but I think it works better as an opener. It's a great way to introduce the album. And it's great that it goes right back to the very beginning of the band, and we get to hear that Mick Abrahams influence, that great bluesy guitar that he was so good at. So yeah, Song for Jeffrey, great opener. Then we get Love Story. This song I really like. This is another Mick Abrahams song, and probably one of the earliest examples of Ian Anderson really exploring his songwriting. Like, this would have been before Stand Up, which is really the first real definitive statement of Ian Anderson wants to be a songwriter of all trades. But Love Story predates that even, and I imagine that's one of the songs that Mick Abrahams wouldn't have felt super comfortable with, because it's not really that bluesy. It is kind of folky. We get some mandolin playing in there, which is nice, and it's got a kind of nice high energy rockin' feel to it, very 60s. Love Story's a good one. I've always really enjoyed that. Track 3 of side 1 is Christmas Song. This is an absolute Tull classic, one that I have to listen to every Christmas Eve. Absolutely mandatory as the first snowfall is coming down. Not the first snowfall. Sometimes it is. I'm digressing again. Yeah, Christmas Song is really good, and again, I'm quite certain Mick Abrahams is still in the band. I know there was a single that had Love Story and Christmas Song. But again, it shows Anderson's ambitions and looking for different outlets to explore his songwriting craft. I love it. I really do like it. It's about certain hypocrisies, and Christmas isn't necessarily what you make of it. I won't get into the details in that. But I love the line at the end, "Hey Santa, pass us that bottle, will you?" That's fun. Then track 4 is Living in the Past, the title track to the compilation album, and probably the most significant song on the album. This is a very famous Tull song. It's been played pretty well consistently throughout their career. And it's been rearranged, and there's lots of really cool different versions of it. But I actually really like the original. This is maybe the first song they did with Martin Barre, because I'm not sure if it was written before or after Stand Up, but it is of that period. It's famously in 5/4 time, which is, or maybe it's 5/8 time. That's got a peppy little tempo. It's all in how you count it, right? But yeah, it's really good, and it really displays Glenn Cornick's bass playing. I mean, he was a really good bass player, and you know, that intro is so classic. It's got a nice little jazzy vibe to it. Love the flute line to it. There's some nice orchestration in there, courtesy of David Palmer. It really is a top-notch Tull classic. Living in the Past. Love that song. Then we get Driving Song. Again, this is another track that kind of came from the stand-up era, although it wasn't released on that album. It's a bonus track on the CD copy that I have of it. And it's kind of still in the bluesier vein. You know, there's a bit of linkage towards This Was, but it's kind of it's a rockier riff. It's spirited vocal performance by Ian Anderson, of course, which is very good. Not essential, but it's a good one. Then side one closes with Bouree. Can't get enough of Bouree. And I think it's good. It's good that they included it on this album because I think that contributed to you know, it gave it more widespread. More people were aware of it, and that helped it out. And of course, it's a classic instrumental. Side two, this is entirely with the main lineup of this album, which is Glenn Cornick, Martin Barre, and Clive Bunker. I always forget their names, and of course Ian Anderson. So this whole side is of that, and it opens with Sweet Dream, another stand-up era track. This is another vital bit to this album, and it is a Tull classic. It's funny, you look at Living in the Past and Sweet Dream. I think had they been included on Stand Up, they would have been the standout tracks. I mean, they would have been, you know, probably the best tracks on the album. Sweet Dream is really good. We get some really dramatic horn arrangements, and that descending riff is just so monstrous. And of course, they would go on to play phenomenally energetic live versions of it in the 70s. I love the drama of it, and you know, Ian Anderson's voice. I mean, again, he was just really starting to find it, and his vocals are fantastic on a lot of these tracks. And I should note, this is the U.S. copy. I'm in Canada, but we get the American ones. So the track listing is a little bit different from the other releases. I know there was a different release in the UK, and I'm not sure if there's a different one still that was released in Europe. But on the U.S. release, we get Singing All Day as track 2, which is a great little jazzy piece, kind of laid back, but it's a laid back song. It's not a super heavy song, but it's not acoustical. It is kind of locked in the jazzy kind of a thing. We get the ooh la la la, and I really like it. It's not a classic, but it's a nice little gem. And then track 3 of this copy of the album, we get Witch's Promise. Now, I think this is a big gem. This is a definite gem. I love Witch's Promise. Definitely in the acoustic vein. I just again, like, the melodies are so strong. I mean, I haven't made enough reference to the melodies, but that's a part of Ian Anderson's songwriting style. And I mean, he had the right voice to convey these wonderful melodies. And Witch's Promise has got just that. Lovely guitar playing, of course. You know, we really see on this album in general. I talked before about how those early albums we can see Ian Anderson's progression as a songwriter, and you know, you can see that on this album as you go from side 1 and you make your way to side 4. You see that development happen, you know, right before your very eyes, and you know, however long the album is. I didn't actually look at it. The length of the album. So yeah, Witch's Promise is fantastic. That's another Tull song that I covered, by the way. If you wanted to go to Brad Bridges on SoundCloud, you can check that out. Not as good as the original, obviously. Track 4 is side 2. We get Teacher. And again, it's I've never been a huge fan of it, but it is an essential song of that time. And it's got some good flute playing, good example of the flute playing over the hard rock. And of course, I mentioned the ch-ch-ch-ch-ch. I love that part. That's kind of funny. We get Inside after that, which this originally released on this and Teacher were both originally released on the U.S. copy of Benefit. And again, kind of in the jazzy vein. I like Inside. It's good. And side 2 finishes with Just Trying to Be. This is another acoustical song, and I really like it. It's quite good. Well orchestrated at the end, and again, it's an example of watching the development of Anderson's songwriting. We see his guitar playing begin to get more sophisticated in the way that he intertwines his guitar lines with the melody, and but by the time they get to side 4, which was tracks that were written and recorded in '71, we can really, he'd pretty much arrived. He was definitely a craftsman. So Just Trying to Be winds up side 2. We get side 3. This is the live side. I think the best part of the live side is we get our first glimpse of Ian Anderson's hilarious onstage banter and whatnot. Of course, in sequence of when these albums came out, I mean, I don't think there was any video or anything that was released. This is the first time anyone that hadn't seen the band got to hear what a comedian Ian Anderson was. They're just like little snippets between the songs, but he was really a funny guy. And the songs, we only get 2 songs on it. We get starts out with By Kind Permission Of, which is John Evans' big significant his welcome to the band. I think this is recorded November of 1970 at Carnegie Hall, the live side. So John Evans had just joined the band, really. Like I said, he was a session guy on Benefit, and then by the time they got to touring it, he joined formally as a member, and they became a 5-piece by Aqualung and Thick as a Brick. So this was kind of early days for John Evans, and it's basically about 8 or so minutes of piano, and then the band kicks in for about less than a minute, and it stops almost immediately, which I always thought was kind of strange, but it's good. The second song on side 3, the last song on side 3, is Dharma For One. Originally released on This Was, but this is a far superior version. They played a heck of a lot heavier, and there's a lot more gusto and energy and spirit. A really good display of Clive Bunker's drumming, and I think he has been overshadowed. I think I like Barrymore Barlow a little bit better, but Clive Bunker really was a fantastic drummer. And of course, he has the big drum solo in Dharma For One. Probably could have been shortened down a little bit, but that was what it was like in 1970. Drummers had their big brrr, and they would just go kind of mental and crazy. I am a drummer. I mean, I'm not criticizing it, but it gets once you've heard one drum solo from that era, you've kind of heard them all. Just being deadly honest. So that wraps up side 3. Then we get side 4, and this is the most recently recorded songs. And I mean, like I said, at this point, Jethro Tull were writing 40-minute epics. So it's good that they had these recent short songs on the album to show people that, hey, they're not exclusively this band that writes these symphonic, crazy, over-the-top pieces. They are still a band that writes songs. And side 4 opens with Wond'ring Again, which is an earlier version of Wond'ring Aloud, which was on Aqualung. I like Wond'ring Aloud much better. Basically, we get the melody, and basically, essentially the song of Wond'ring Aloud is the bridge in Wond'ring Again. It's kind of it's a sweet song. Wond'ring Again is a sweet song. We get the full band. The full band plays along with it. And when we get to the melody from Wond'ring Aloud, it's a different set of lyrics on there. I don't think the lyrics are quite as strong on Wond'ring Again. And I like that Wond'ring Aloud is like just a snippet of a song. It's just like a quick little flash, a moment of thought, a moment in time. The thing that's cool about Wond'ring Again, when we get to that great line in the melody where the original, like the version we know and love from Aqualung, Wond'ring Aloud, he says it's only the giving that makes you what you are, and then in this one he says it's only the taking that makes you what you are, which is cool. It also adds a nice little bit of conceptual continuity between their work, which is cool. But like I said, Wond'ring Aloud I think is far superior in my humble opinion. Then on the American version we get Hymn 43. The UK version had Locomotive Breath, but that was a huge hit in the States, I think. And Hymn 43 was another song from Aqualung, a nice high-energy piece of rockery, and that's good. Then we get Life is a Long Song. The rest of the songs make up an EP that was released in the UK called Life is a Long Song. And you know, that's kind of the current, not quite the current. This was released at the end of '72, and these songs were from '71. So, you know, kind of current, I guess. When we look back from 2016, we can say it's current. And Life is a Long Song is fantastic. I really good early Tull song. Again, we can see the sophistication of the songwriting. I mean, he's arrived somewhere now, Anderson. Definitely more more thoughtfully arranged and more just more well executed than some of the stuff on Stand Up. Stand Up is that early burst, and now he's honing in his craft. And again, it's a nice build-up. It starts acoustically and winds its way out to a full band arrangement. We get a gorgeous orchestration. Notably, Wond'ring Again, the first song, there's no orchestration on that. It's just the band. But I'm digressing. Life is a Long Song is excellent. Great orchestra, great build-up, all that. Track 4 of side 4, we get Up the Pool, which is Ian's little dedication to Blackpool, where his roots were planted. And it's a nice little folky song. Starts a little bit darker, but again, like Life's a Long Song, eventually the band comes in. We get some nice orchestrations, and it builds up to a nice little rocker. The next song is Dr. Bogenbroom. I guess still kind of in the folky vein, but it's not really a build-up. It's folky, but with that kind of rock edge. It's a nice blend, actually. And kind of reminds me of songs that would come, a couple years later on War Child. Not quite as good as those ones, but it's a good song. Good song, typical of Jethro Tull, 1971. Then we get 4 Later after that, which is a rollicking instrumental, kind of a rockier instrumental than something like Bouree, but it's still good. It's not as good as Bouree, but I like it. Does some good flute playing, good display from Martin Barr, all his riffery in that. And it's a quick little burst. Obviously, decades later, some of the instrumentals that Anderson would write would be very good. And the instrumentals that Anderson has been writing in later years are more directly influenced by folky melodies, whereas this is more of like a rocky thing. Like 4 Later, it's kind of typical of early '70s prog, which is cool because that's what they were doing, right? And the album winds up with Nursie, which is not the best song on the album by any means, but it's a really nice little acoustic piece. Ian Anderson and his acoustic guitar. Again, it's another one of those little snippet songs. So we only get it's about a minute and a half, and yeah, it's lovely. So yeah, it's not necessarily part of the canon. It was released at a time when Tull was doing something very different. But it is an essential. It is an essential collection of songs, and it really wraps up those early years quite nicely. And I think it was very strategically released. I think it was released at just the right time. Just the right time to be able to maintain the success that they'd been having. So again, at this point in their career, early '70s, they were phenomenally huge. Aqualung and Thick as a Brick sent them into stratospheric levels. And yeah, good for them. Just Tull rocks. Next time we're going to talk about the follow-up to Thick as a Brick, the very famous A Passion Play. So stick around for that. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you later.